Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out on a rather blustery night. We really appreciate it here at the Forum. I am Jennifer Bernardi, Executive Director of Fort Hall Forum. And before we begin, I have just a couple of announcements. This event is being video recorded and will be available free to subscribers on Comcast Xfinity in their Public Affairs folder. It will also be posted in a couple of weeks to YouTube and iTunes University. It'll be free on there as well. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to be alerted when I post it. And to subscribe to the Fort Hall Forum's YouTube channel, just visit our website and click on the YouTube button. If you are sharing a comment or a question in the second half of our program, please speak directly into the microphone. It's that one right there. So when I announce question and answer, you can go ahead and line up at that microphone. That's so that not only the audience can hear you, but so that we can hear you on video as well. And please understand that by speaking, you are giving Fort Hall Forum permission to record you. You may also tweet your questions to #FHF if the prospect of standing at that microphone is too much for you to bear tonight. And please take a minute now to silence your phones, if you will. Yep, you all have them. Take a minute. Yep, speakers too. Yep, good, excellent. We are thrilled to partner with Suffolk University's Alumni Association for this event during Homecoming Week. Fort Hall Forum thanks its generous sponsors, including, among others, the Lowell Institute and Suffolk University. The Forum also thanks its members whose generosity makes our free public events possible. If you're not a member of Fort Hall Forum yet, please, I hope you'll stop by the information booth before you leave and become a member. Now let me introduce our moderator for the evening, Father Richard McGowan. Richard McGowan is an adjunct associate professor of the Carroll School of Management and an adjunct associate professor of the economics department in the College of Arts and Sciences at Boston College. He is also a research associate at Harvard Medical Division on Addictions. The focus of his research is on the interaction of the business and public policy processes, especially as they relate to tobacco, alcohol, and gambling industries. He has written several books, including State Lotteries and Legalized Gambling, Painless Revenue or Painful Mirage, Government and the Transformation of the Gaming Industry, and Dividing the Spoils, States and the Gambling Industry. Please give a warm welcome to Richard McGowan.
There's 3 sins. No more than the 3 sins, thank you, after that. What I'd like to do is first introduce the panel, and then I'd like to make a brief statement, and then I'm going to let each member of the panel make an opening statement. And then from there, I think let the audience offer questions and see from there, okay? So let me first introduce the panel. First, Frank Callahan. Since 2007, Frank has been president of the Massachusetts Building Trade Council, AFL-CIO, representing 75,000 men and women in the construction trades from 74 local unions and district councils across the state. He's also vice president of the 400,000 member Massachusetts AFL-CIO. Callahan began his career in the labor movement with the Pioneer Valley Building and Construction Trade Council, AFL-CIO, in 1990. After holding a variety of offices with them, he was appointed legislative director for the Massachusetts Building Trade Association, AFL-CIO, in 1996. He's a delegate to the Greater Boston Central Labor Council and president of the Construction Institute. Michael Mathis is the president and the chief operating officer of the MGM Springfield Development. Upon licensing, will be responsible for the implementation, development, and operation of the resort. Mathis is a 14-year veteran of the gaming industry. He joined MGM Resorts International in 2011 as vice president of the global gaming for MGM Hospitality, where he was responsible for identifying and evaluating potential gaming development opportunities and drafting gaming legislation addressing development and operational issues. He previously served as assistant general counsel for Boyd Gaming Corporation, general counsel for Echelon Resorts, and corporate counsel for Las Vegas Sands Corporation. Mathis has served as a member of the International Association of Gaming Advisors. Why don't we show our appreciation for that? And now for the yes side, Scott Harshbarger. Scott Harshbarger served as Middlesex District Attorney for 8 years, followed by 2 terms as the Massachusetts Attorney General. He has received public praise for building the first Family and Community Crime Bureau, his Conflict Resolution and Violence Prevention Project, and his Safe Neighborhood Initiative to reduce urban crime and violence. After running on the Democratic Party ticket for the governor of Massachusetts, Harshbarger served as president and CEO of Common Cause and helped organize the push to pass campaign finance reform. Harshbarger's public service continues today with his chairmanship of Pro Soccer's National Pro Bono Initiative. And Bill Walczak was the founder and CEO for 3 decades of the Codman Square Health Center, a founding president of Codman Academy Charter School, and a co-founder and a CEO of Dotwell, a management service partnership with the Dorchester House Multi-Service Center. Codman Square Health Center is internationally known for using the medical system as a platform for community regeneration. Walczak has been named president of the Lewis Family Foundation and Grand Circle Foundation. Walczak is the founding president of the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network, serves on the University of Boston Board of Visitors, and is founding president of Boston Health Net, a network of 15 community health centers. He's worked on community regeneration efforts in countries around the world. And why don't we show our appreciation? Now, I'd just like to briefly show, hopefully this little ditty will line up lots of the issues that we're going to be discussing tonight. I am trying to play it, and you'll just to see where people are coming here. And I nicknamed this the legislator and gambling. The following is a fictional dialogue between a fictional state legislator, or for that matter, any government official, answering a constituent's letter about the gambling situation in the state. And here's how the letter starts. I had not intended to discuss this controversial subject at this time when the state is faced with all sides of fiscal perils. However, I want you to know that I do not shun controversy. On the contrary, I will stand on any issue at any time, regardless of how fraught with controversy it may be. If you ask me how I feel about gambling, here's how I stand. If, when you say gambling, you mean the devil's entertainment, a poison scourge, a pastime that defiles the innocent, dethrones reason, abuses the mathematically illiterate, destroys the home, creates misery by taking bread from the mouths of little children and other family members, and forces those families to live in lives of degradation, despair, shame, I'm against gambling with all my political power. But if you say gaming, you mean games that give pleasure, a harmless form of entertainment that's enjoyed by millions with no adverse effects, if you mean the activity that permits people from all sorts of backgrounds to compete on a level playing field, if you mean the activity that pours into our treasury untold millions of dollars that are used to provide tender care for our crippled children, our elderly, and our infirm, and to build highways, hospitals, and schools, then I am certainly in favor of it. This is my position. I will not compromise. I truly wish to know even more about how my constituents feel about the gambling situation in our fair state and even more in our neighboring states. So now I'd like to I'm going to have each side alternate with opening statements, and first I'd like to start out with Scott Harshbarger.
No, I'm glad. Why don't I'll do that if you want to. Would you like to start, Mr. Walczak?
No, go ahead.
Let me first of all thank you very much, the Fort Hall Forum. I've had the opportunity over the years to participate in these forums. They're exceptional, and I'm very pleased to have the chance on this issue to speak to an audience that I know is going to vote yes on 3 in order to stop the mess. So that we can all be objective, however, we're having both sides presented here. I also would like to say to this particular audience that I remember and will always value deeply the support that so many of you gave me in various statewide candidacies for Attorney General and Governor, as District Attorney. And it was a wonderful base and a terrific group of supporters, and I'm very proud to have had that support from all of you. I came to this issue in the early 1990s as Attorney General because primary responsibility was consumer protection and public protection, and to make sure that people told the truth about their product and be sure that all industries played on a level playing field and did not achieve their objectives of competition by failed or flawed promises or unfair practices. That was an issue that many attorneys general around the country had dealt with at that time. I was joined at that time by Joe Malone, who I love serving with now on Monday Morning Quarterbacks, for any of you that don't have to get up early in the morning to watch that. Joe was a Republican treasurer of Massachusetts and joined in opposing the expansion of gambling in Massachusetts because we already gambled at an incredibly higher rate, probably more than any in the country. And secondly, because it would cannibalize the most successful and now increasingly successful lottery in the country, if not in the world. And that was his basic view, that this would have a major effect not only on regressive taxation, not only in cannibalizing businesses, but because it would have an effect. And that lottery provides all kinds of benefits to Massachusetts' quality of life at every single level. That is a prized commodity. I now fast forward because at that time, thanks to various efforts over the years, we did oppose the expansion of gambling. It did not pass. It did not happen until in 2007 the governor indicated his support. Representative DeMacy, the chair of the House Ways and Means, opposed that and continued to oppose it until he left in that role. When this issue came, I would simply like to make 5 points at this point, and I will be very, very brief because I know there's plenty of time for questions and people will have opportunities to respond. Given the history, and now given what we know nationally, including the fact that gambling was one of the fastest expanding businesses in the country, and until recently, it was the only industry affecting every state except for tobacco, guns, and gambling that was not regulated at the federal level, in spite of many efforts to try to have it regulated at the federal level because of its national impact, both positive and negative. It's the only piece of legislation I know of that when passed, every cost and consequence that was predictable was included in the legislation. This is not a fantasy. 20 major mitigating factors. We know that this is an industry, when it comes, whatever benefits it provides in the short term brings with it predictable costs and consequences from experiences from every other state, including, over the last several years, the saturation of the Northeast and the gradual economic bankruptcy of many casinos in many states. It brings with it an impact on local aid. It will affect the lottery. It will cannibalize local businesses. It brings huge amounts of substance abuse and problem gambling issues to this. It will have a number of effects, including the impact on particular communities and surrounding communities regionally, as well as the communities affected. Those are in the legislation. This is not the positions that have been raised by all of us, although I happen to believe that those are very important costs and consequences that need to be taken into account given any benefits that may arise. And I think, in my view, they're predictable, they're known, and there's still unintended consequences as well. Secondly, in my view, as I've said many times, this is like Lay's potato chips. You can't have just one. And we are not going to have just one if this passes, if we do not effectively repeal this. We will have at least 3, and that will obviously allow the Native American tribes to have to exercise their sovereign right to have, if they can put land in trust, they will be entitled to have additional casinos or slot machines wherever they have land in trust. There's nothing we can do about that. Right now, we have a law in Massachusetts that was negotiated in the middle 80s, which by and large means that Native American tribes still have to comply with all the laws of the Commonwealth. And as soon as Massachusetts allowed that exemption, you free that up. It may not be the 15 Indian reservation casinos that occur in Wisconsin or the 40 in California, but there are legitimate other reasons that they will have a perfect right to have their casino without regard to whatever state oversight may exist in that process. The third, these are failed and flawed promises, and I believe it's a failed and flawed public policy. Because as you look at this, as we look even at what we've seen to date, this was sold as destination resorts, bringing people from out of state, not from local residents. This was sold as being 50,000 jobs, not just 10,000 jobs. I think the jobs are important. It was brought at a time when we are at tough economic times in this Commonwealth, and yet we now have an economy that produces 15,000 construction jobs every year in many, many other ways as we go through this. So the promises that are being made in terms of what it will do in terms of benefits have to be taken into account, in my view, are substantially flawed. We can discuss that obviously more as we go through it. Fourth, let me just say from my background both as Attorney General and a common cause, this happens to me to be a classic money and politics issue. That is, very rarely in any state, including Massachusetts, with all due respect to the people that are here and the organization that's now occurred, the effort to expand gambling is never triggered by a grassroots movement where people demand the right to have their money taken through machines that are designed, if used as intended, to take your money, a predatory business that is designed to produce profits for owners in the state without regard to its impact on others, profits that may not stay in Massachusetts, may not be reinvested in Massachusetts. It's perfectly entitled. They're entitled to do that. But we ought not to we have to understand that today as well, right now in this Commonwealth, our side is being outgunned completely on paid media. And that's not happening from $5 and $10 contributions to the no on 3. It's being handled by 10 people who by and large given now $7.8 million to pay for the media and the lobbyists and the law firms that are having a great, and they're entitled to have it. This is a democracy. We're entitled to be heard, not to have our way. I just like people to believe that there should be some fair competition, not simply being outgunned simply because we have not been able to get the resources necessary to be on television as well. I therefore refer to this as David versus Goliath effort. I also believe this is people versus money, and I happen to think this is a classic case where an election may well be bought as well as sold, and I think in some respects without a full disclosure of all the potential impacts understood by people. And the final point is simply this. In my view, this happens to be, and actually anti-gambling coalitions historically have been broad-based. Faith communities, evangelical right, the Catholic Church, the Episcopal bishops have all spoken against this on all kinds of grounds. Republicans, Democrats, progressives, conservatives are part of this effort, but most importantly, it's a citizen grassroots effort. On November 5th last year, aside from all the best laid plans of legislators, the industry, the politicians, and the legislation, the people of East Boston outgunned 240 to 1 in terms of dollars, voted not to have the casino at Suffolk Downs. In Palmer and Monson, which has just as many tough economic times as Springfield, with all due respect, it was voted down. Mohegan Sun lost that vote. In Springfield even, in July, middle of July, 25% of the people voting it only lost by 10% at that point. This, in other words, this is an issue where citizen grassroots have triggered this movement of opposition. This is led by citizens, it's a grassroots effort, and I believe we can do better, and this is a mistake we need not make. Thank you very much. Vote yes on 3. Sorry.
Now I'd like to, Michael or Frank, which one of you want to go first?
Frank, why don't you take it? I can't follow
Okay.
that.
Okay. Thank you for coming. Our time is up. All joking aside, thank you, Father. And like Scott, I'd like to thank Suffolk University and the Fort Hall Forum for inviting us here tonight for this opportunity to address these issues as we come up on Election Day. There is more than just money in this race. I represent 75,000 skilled craftsmen and women all across this state who labor in the construction industry. Some of the best trained, most highly skilled, experienced, and dedicated tradesmen and women you'll ever meet. They're the best in the world. I don't know about the number with 15,000 jobs that are created in our construction market, but that leaves 60,000 of them high and dry. Now, I think you sold yourself a little bit short there, Scott. We have more jobs than that, certainly in the Seaport District, in Kendall Square, and in Cambridge, and other parts of eastern Massachusetts. But I don't just represent the eastern part of the state. We have members who work and live in every one of the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. I too came to this issue in 1994, at the same time Scott did. At that time, I was the executive director for the Pioneer Valley Building Trades Council and the president of the Pioneer Valley Labor Council as well. And we were seeking a ballot question in the city of Springfield. Yes, times were tough. And this was not just generated by a couple of rich guys who wanted to put a casino in town. It was generated by the grassroots, because I was in those meetings with our members, with our representatives of the trades who wanted to go to work. We were running food banks at that time for our members who were literally couldn't feed their families because there was no work. Now, times have gotten better, but I was in Springfield last week. Springfield still has double-digit unemployment across the board, and I can tell you as a fact that a number of the trades are experiencing unemployment exceeding 20%. There's just not a lot of work going on, union or non-union, in the greater Springfield area. This represents an awful lot of good jobs for those men and women who have a career in the construction industry. There's been a lot of talk about temporary jobs, and maybe we can get into that later. Those are not temporary jobs, those are good jobs where people pay their bills, pay their mortgage, put their kids through school, and support their families. They're good living wage jobs, and they need those. This is about economic development. It was the same then in 1994 as it is today. We're not trying to build Atlantic City here in Massachusetts. We're not putting all our eggs in one basket. This is not, we're going to rely on one industry to save the state of Massachusetts. We have a diverse economy. We have a very successful economy. But all of our efforts, or the bulk of our efforts as a government, as a society, have been to create jobs in the biotech, high-tech, the innovation district in the seaport, and other industries. And we support those, because those are good jobs, those are good things to have. And we should continue to support those, and just speaking for the labor movement, if I can for a minute, we will continue to support those types of initiatives. But this is the only initiative from this administration, from this legislature, that addresses the 62% of Massachusetts residents who don't have a college degree. People who want, and they should have good jobs as well, both on the construction end and in the casinos and the hotels and the entertainment venues and the rest that goes along with casino gaming. They deserve to have good jobs at good wages with good training that's provided by, I know the hotel and restaurant employees has a phenomenal training program with MGM, and maybe Michael will speak about that later, so they can advance in the industry with good benefits, with health insurance, with dignity, a retirement where you can retire with a good pension, not just a 401k, but a pension like we have in the building trades. These are good jobs. This is about economic development. We're not trying to replicate Atlantic City or Las Vegas. That isn't Massachusetts. I agree with the other side on that. We're not trying to replicate that. We're just trying to have this a piece of an overall economic development, both in the Boston area, in the Western region, and we hope for Region C. This is, if you add all three of those regions, we still don't know what's going to happen in Region C other than the slot parlor in Plainville. But we're talking about over $3 billion, that's with a B, of investment in the state of Massachusetts. Now, we can talk about the numbers of jobs that's been discussed ad infinitum over the 20 years that I've been involved in this, but thousands and thousands of jobs. And we'll see at the end who's right. But if it was 1,000 jobs, I think it would be worth it. If it was 2,000, I firmly believe that it's going to be 10,000 full-time jobs, permanent jobs in those facilities, and at least 6,500 good-paying, family-sustaining wage construction jobs to build those facilities. I hope you vote no on question 3 and put a period on this after 20 years, after going through the legislature, public debates like this, debates in the media, debates on the editorial pages, legislative hearings, a signature by the governor, lawsuits, 3 years of investigation by the Casino Gaming Commission. It's time we built casinos in Massachusetts. It's time we put people to work and get the Massachusetts economy working for everybody in Massachusetts, not simply those with lab coats and PhDs. Thank you.
You're up, Bill.
All right. So my name is Bill Walczak. I live in Dorchester. I've been in Dorchester for the last 41 years. And founder of the Codman Square Health Center and 2 high schools in Boston. So I've been working most of my life in helping people with limited means achieve some sort of success through either education or through health or through various programs, nutrition programs, all sorts of different things. So I've experienced the lower income side of of the city of Boston for most of my life. And I can tell you that there is a great draw for people in low-income communities towards gambling. And I've experienced personally having to fire some people who have wound up stealing money from various organizations who've, because they got addicted to gambling. And I can tell you also that that personally in my family, my mother got addicted to gambling as she developed Alzheimer's and would go with the Rosary Society, no offense, but to Atlantic City, where she would hand in her credit card that she knew had money somehow attached to it, and they would charge her $50 for getting $100 worth of chips. That's the predatory nature of the gambling institutions. My Aunt Teresa from upstate in the Scranton area of Pennsylvania was, after she inherited the family farm and started selling it off in pieces, wound up with some amount of income. She went to Atlantic City on a regular basis, and after she lost $10,000 in one sitting, the gambling casino decided that she was an easy mark and started flying her down for free from Scranton Wilkes-Barre Airport every weekend so that she could lose additional $10,000, and eventually she declared bankruptcy. There's a predatory world out there, and you can say, well, it's up to them to make that decision. But in fact, since I've worked most of my life in public health, and the public health world teaches us one thing, which is try to prevent harm from coming in, this is an opportunity for us to prevent harm, additional harm from coming in. A couple of stops away on the subway, a bus ride away for 3 million people in greater Boston. It's no longer a ride down to Foxwoods or to Mohegan Sun. It's something that you could get to right away. But this is starkly contrasts with the image that you get from the casino industry. I passed by a bus stop a few months ago, and there was a Foxwoods ad on it, and there was these young, sexy people in slinky dresses and fancy suits standing next to a roulette wheel, and with a lot of bling on, and it was flying in from Paris or Dubai or places like that to spend their money. In Connecticut. Well, this is not reality. The reality is that according to the casino industry itself, according to Wynn Resorts, about 2/3 of all people are going to be coming from within 30 minutes of Wynn Resorts when that opens up. And how much money are they going to spend? I mean, you hear about, we're going to recapture $400 million that's currently spent in Connecticut. But in reality, our casino industry plans on getting billions of dollars from Massachusetts residents. And where's that money coming from? That money's coming from our neighborhoods, from working class and low income people who we know from studies are the targets of the casino industry, coming into any of these casinos are going to be built and spending billions of dollars that currently is being used for things like, say, food, rent, local artistic pursuits, all sorts of different things that normal people use. Where's that money coming from? Is it new money that's coming in? No, it's money that's coming in from people who live in our neighborhoods, and typically the working class and poor people. So if we're looking at where the money is going to go from them, that $1 billion or several $1 billion that actually is planned in gross gambling revenue from each of the casinos, we know that 80% of it will be used in slot machines. Still remember going with my mother to Foxwoods, and you walk in there and there's a lot of blue-haired people in there, pushing the buttons and losing their money. Now, at one point, those slot machines may have been random, and maybe the 777 would come up and you'd actually make money. That's no longer the case. They're rigged. We know they're rigged because it's been studied. Because computers dictate how those things pay out money. And there's a term in the gambling industry called gambling to extinction, which basically means when you go home broke. And they know how to feed you a little bit money back so you can, you put money in, you get just a little bit money back, you put more money in, and eventually you lose all your money. This is not the kind of thing that's just a random thing. This is actually planned. We know that upwards of 40% of people will be problem gamblers. We know that from studies. This is going to be people that already have a gambling addiction, and it's going to get worse. We know that gambling addiction will double within 10 miles of a casino, because that's what the national studies show. And so, so if we're looking at what do we do, how do we prevent this problem from coming in, it's obvious. We need to make sure that we are not providing an opportunity for people to come in here, create casinos, and take away the money that's currently being used for people to do, important things in Massachusetts, take money away from local businesses, because we know that's also true. Go into any of these gambling casinos, you'll notice a couple of things. There's no clocks on the wall, and there's no windows. And they give you, if you ever, take one of these buses down to Foxwoods, what they do is they give you a token for food. Why? Because they don't want you leaving the place. They want you to stay in there, and they want you to spend all your money inside the casino. So think about it. Think about what it means to have that. In terms of jobs, now we've heard all sorts of numbers on jobs. So today I went online and I went to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and looked up the employment estimate and mean wage estimates for the occupation of the most common job inside the gambling casinos, which is gaming dealers. And the mean national wage is $20,890. This is today's data, okay? $20,890. Now, we've heard $45,000 in wages and stuff like that, but this is the most common job in there. And even if you look at, the gambling industry in general, you say, oh, well, maybe there's higher wages somewhere else. When they take all of the gambling industry's numbers together, the number is $22,880, or roughly $23,000 a year, is the typical or the average wage of the cross-sector of gambling wages. So when you think about these great jobs that are going to be created by the gambling, the casino industry, think $23,000. I don't know about you, but try finding an apartment in the greater Boston area that on a salary of $23,000 a year. It's not likely, not very likely to do. So when you think about the jobs, yes, I completely support building our construction industry and building new jobs. But it's an insult to the people of Massachusetts to think that the only way we can provide jobs in a state that markets itself as the only natural resource being brain power is that somehow we have to create jobs that are $23,000 a year on average, or that that our only construction industry jobs that we're going to be able to create are building casinos that that'll take a year or so, maybe 2 years to build. We need to come up with a real economic strategy for Massachusetts, not this phony economic strategy that essentially takes money from poor people and working class people, redistributes it in the form of some jobs, poorly paying jobs, and then sends the profits out to wherever the gambling bosses live, which is not Massachusetts, I can assure you. So I've asked you to think about it. Think about whether we really want to bring in the kind of corruption that we already know exists from this industry, right? Every week that goes by, there's a new indictment, there's a new problem, shady characters that are involved in this type of thing. Do we really want to see that kind of industry coming in and dominating Massachusetts politics and dominating Massachusetts economy? That is not something, it's not a good plan for Massachusetts. It's something we are better than. We should not be advocating for this kind of economy in Massachusetts. We are better than that. So I urge you to vote yes on question 3. It's really important that we turn this away and be the first state in America that actually says no to the casino industry and says, hey, we're not interested in this kind of economy. Thank you.
And our final presentation will be by Michael Mathis.
Thank you, Father. My name is Michael Mathis. I'm president of MGM Springfield, and I've got, I think, a simpler version of a story than what you've heard tonight. I just want to talk to you about the journey of how we got to Springfield. I work for a Fortune 500 company, MGM Resorts International. We have 62,000 employees across the world. We were invited into Massachusetts after a very deliberate process, a 100-page gaming statute that we believe is one of the best gaming statutes in the entire country. Not because it makes it easy, but because the very opposite, it makes it very hard. And you'll hear a little bit tonight about the different things that Massachusetts thought about that other jurisdictions haven't. We found a piece of real estate in downtown Springfield. It had been obliterated by a tornado in June of 2011. We went to the mayor of Springfield after we did a market analysis, and we asked him, how would you feel if we invested $800 million on that piece of real estate? What if we paid you $25 million annually towards infrastructure, towards early education? That's a site today that generates $634,000. We said we would put 2,000 construction workers on that site over a 3-year period, and we would hire 3,000 people from the region, 1,000 of which would come from Springfield. Springfield right now has 7,000 unemployed individuals, so we felt very good about taking 1,000 people off of unemployment and putting them to work in the hospitality industry. We told the mayor and the residents, and we spent 6 months doing so through various forums and neighborhood council meetings, that we would bring 1/3 of our customers up from Connecticut. So like the question was raised earlier, where is this money coming from? 1/3 of those dollars in our business plan is coming from outside of the state. For the last 25 years, Massachusetts has been the driver of the New England gaming market. It's the largest gaming market in New England, but it doesn't have any casinos. It doesn't keep any of the revenue, doesn't keep any of the jobs. We went out and talked to the people, and on a hot July day, very hot July day, some of those who were in the room will remember how hot it was, 25% of the electorate came out, and they supported us. 14,000 people came out and voted in support of this project. We're really proud of that. We're a little confused why we're not building right now, but I think that's part of this dialogue, and Massachusetts wants to get it right, and we want to make sure that they understand that they did get it right. The one thing I disagree with in terms of the way this discussion is being cast, we don't believe it's David versus Goliath. We believe it's people with jobs versus people without jobs. And when we're in Springfield, and I've come to care about the people of Springfield, when the folks from the other side come through, Mr. Ribeiro, who's chairman of the Repeal the Deal, I was told by one of the reporters that when he launched the anti-campaign, he told one of the reporters that this was the first time he was in Springfield. I find that shocking that the only time you would come to Springfield is to deprive that city of this opportunity. So we're here to answer any questions you have. We're very proud of what we're trying to do here, and thank you.
Before we open it up for questions, I'm just going to, for both sides, I guess I do, by the way, I teach statistics at BC. So one of the things I teach is about risk and how you look at risk. And it's an interesting thing about the word risk, by the way. It was never used, for instance, the Romans and the Greeks never even had a word for risk. The first time the word risk was ever used was when the Italians used it to describe the Venetians when they sent their ships out. And so there's two aspects. It's interesting. The word risk comes from two Italian words, one for danger and one for venture. And so one of the things I think when you talk about the gambling industry is there's a danger to it and there's an adventure to it. And so what I would like to ask each side is, right, what do you think the risks are for the state on this development? So let the yes side play, and then we'll let the no side. But how do you view risk, and in what sense? Again, that there's a sense of danger to it, but there's also a sense of venture to it, and that people need to. In what ways does the state have to prevent people from taking risk, and yet what are the times that the state should allow people to take a risk?
Well, let me just address, and other people will certainly comment, and thank you. It's an interesting comment because I agree it's exactly right about the danger and the opportunity. And I guess I start this way. That is, we have what theoretically is a very effective regulatory scheme in place. Already, however, every time there's been a close call, the decision has gone for the industry. Now, that may be a view that that's the function of the legislation, to have economic benefits and focus primarily on those as opposed to, and competition, as opposed to looking at all the costs and consequences. The examples are legion. 6 days after the folks got disqualified in Plainville, within 6 days of the election, Penn National, which had lost in Tewksbury, was allowed to compete on the same memorandum agreement in Plainville, and people to vote not even knowing who Penn National was, and they won. Secondly, East Boston voted against it. Revere voted for it. Everybody thought this was all about a casino in East Boston. The commission, in its wisdom, decided, well, this is the one time we'll hold another vote. We'll have another vote. Well, let's see if Revere wants to vote, because we'll reconfigure. The only time I've ever seen a real estate project reconfigured in 3 months when you can't even get a permitted real estate development in 5 years in Boston. The third piece of this that goes with that has to do with issues about recusal, about the various things that are going on. As my understanding was, one of the people that was disqualified was when Harris was supposed to be the manager of the. It was because they had somebody connected to organized crime. We just indicted 3 people in Everett who owned the land that were purchased for that. Now, this is not only about Springfield. This is about the entire state. This is not just about your backyard. All the consequences are writ large in this state. And the regulators, the question is, and this is a very interesting issue, when it comes down to tough regulatory calls, once we have these industry, we already know that they will yield to the industry for many justifiable reasons, perhaps. But tough legislation, tough regulation does not lead to limitation. It tends to be, when you look at Lincoln, Rhode Island, you look at Atlantic City, you look at Detroit, you look at Gary, Indiana, you look at Bangor, every single time, this is the only industry I know of that when they fail, you double down. You double down and go further down. We give them more hours. We add more economic development in New Jersey. We look for more things to do. And I don't see why people in Massachusetts, unless you have ultimate faith in our ability to never have an issue of whether you call it corruption or industry domination. We've just gone through everything from a big dig to a probation scandal to a whole issue. Why we think somehow money and influence the industry is not going to dominate in this area. This is not about jobs per se. We're better than that. I go to Springfield. I just to say to Mike, in case you didn't know, I've been to Springfield an awful lot of times. And terrific people out there. The only place in the whole region that voted for casinos was Springfield. Every surrounding community voted against it. Every surrounding community voted against it consistently. It could never have passed a regional vote. And when you look in Boston, the other risk is here on the 500 yards away from Everett's Wynn Casino, Joe Curtatone, the mayor of Somerville, 20 years ago was Slumville. 20 years ago, it only could offer a sewage plant as its primary attraction. 12 years later, under Joe Curtatone, we have an economic development plan in the city that should be a model for every city in Massachusetts. And it's a commentary on our political and civic leadership that we haven't done it. I understand that Springfield views this not as primarily economic development. I was told out there that it wasn't. It was just, it's our last best hope. For 40 years, you folks from Boston have come out and promised us economic development, and you get in there and nothing happens. My answer was, hey, I tried to become governor in 1998. I wanted to do something for Springfield. The fact we haven't, why does that mean we ought to have casinos? Why isn't that a commentary on a political leadership? Why aren't we asking, can't you do as Bill Walczak, who ran for mayor in Boston, the first person to actually suggest that why in the world should Seaport be the only innovative district in Boston, with the hub of the state, the place, the best airlines, the best commuting, and every bone that was necessary for major economic development. Why was East Boston excluded? Why was Everett excluded from that? Somebody ought to ask the question, why do we think our political leadership is going to stand up and deliver courage today when historically in many other areas, not even as enticing as this? That's the risk. The risk is that we cannot effectively oversee an industry when you look around the country and see that in every state, right now, it's now rated as a risk industry, Father. Wall Street Journal, the rating industries, the saturation has turned it into a risk investment in the Northeast, and all of a sudden, Massachusetts thinks we're going to be different. Just like we voted for George McGovern, we're going to be the only state in the country that is going to do this right. That is a pipe dream, and that is the danger, in my view. Whatever the opportunities are, please, we may not win this, but I don't want anybody to leave here to forget what Bill Walczak said. I believe we need good jobs. I think you look who people running for governor. What are they talking about? They're sort of halfway admit, well, maybe we'll have a casino in Springfield if we pass this vote. They really talk about what? innovation and opportunity, education, investment in infrastructure. They don't talk about casinos as economic development as part of any plan, no matter how diverse, because that is not, they know, contrary to fact, that's not, especially in Massachusetts. Let me back up. I firmly believe that what the Mississippi Attorney General told me in 1992 when I went to Biloxi, Mississippi to see 9 riverboats in navigable water that couldn't float more than 50 feet that were casinos. He said, look, come and see what our jobs are. Our teachers are now gaming dealers. Our police officers are security officers in the casinos. It takes away all the jobs. It has done something for us, though. I have nothing else to offer. If I had anything else to offer, education, healthcare, higher education, biotech, solid construction jobs all over this state, that's where I would never let a casino join me. That's the risk, Father. That's the risk.
Father, can I jump in?
You certainly can.
You know, if the question is what's the biggest risk, I wanted to read you a couple of headlines. This is from the Providence Journal. June 27, 2014. Headline is, Mass Casino Question Gives Rhode Island Chance to Keep Its Suckers. And here's a couple of quotes. And you just have to believe that the people at Twin River and in Rhode Island's Treasurer's office are looking at the developments next door and thinking that they should start sending some cash and a few hundred ground troops over the border to help convince Bay State residents that they really don't want the Rhode Island, what Rhode Island already has. And Rhode Island could celebrate in a twisted way, perverted kind of way. It could see the threat to its bottom line removed. Okay, that's what your neighbors are saying. Let me read you another headline. This is from the Hartford Courant, June 26, 2014. Glossy casino dreams face test at ballot box. This is a quote. Neighboring states ought to be rejoicing over this obstacle to building 3 casinos and a slot parlor in New England's largest state. Those resorts, if completed, will threaten Connecticut's 2 Indian casinos in the southeast corner of the state. Connecticut's government has a significant stake in the money spent on gambling at Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun. The Massachusetts casino voter offers some relief to Hartford's taxpayers. To me, the biggest threat on our side is that Massachusetts residents don't recognize that this is already a gaming market. I'll spend all day, all week defending our industry. I think it's a great industry. But the reality is on November 5th, regardless of what happens, thousands of Massachusetts residents are going to get in their cars, some of them perhaps on the yes side celebrating a victory, and they're going to take their business to Foxwoods, Mohegan Sun, and on the way they're going to buy gas, they're going to stop and buy meals, and they're going to continue to put neighboring state residents into work. And they're going to help pay for school salaries and highways. And I don't know why no one wants to keep those dollars. I do know why. A lot of people do want to keep those dollars. That's why the no on 3 is going to be victorious, because they recognize the reality and they want to keep those benefits here in Massachusetts.
Having
I could just add to that. There's a risk in everything. All of us are going to drive home or take the T across the street, and there are risks in every business. But I think these risks have been mitigated. There's another part that you can mitigate risk, and I think the legislature did a fantastic job here. We have the most comprehensive gaming legislation and regulation, and I was a critic of the commission because I think they took too long. But they did their job. They reviewed this, they reviewed the financial wherewithal, they reviewed the records, they reviewed everything that needed to be done. There are commitments in there to mitigate that risk. We were concerned during the legislative process, like happened in some other states, that a casino license awardee refused to build. They just wanted to block and protect their markets in those other states. We made sure that didn't happen here in Massachusetts. We made sure that the jobs were going to be good jobs because we were required, as part of the application process, to say what those jobs were going to look like, what the women, minority, residents, what the construction jobs were going to look like, what those investments were going to be, a whole host of requirements. Those of you who have read it, and I was involved in the legislative process on components of it, it's very comprehensive. I sat through all of those hearings. I like to laugh that I was the last person to testify at a hearing that went from 10 o'clock in the morning until 7:30 at night. Almost made Dan Bowlesy miss his flight, but he was chairing the committee. But that wasn't the only one. This was vetted, researched, studied, debated, ad infinitum, as I said before. So that risk, as there is in everything in life, has been mitigated at every angle possible. There's no guarantees in life, but I can guarantee you this: there is not a piece of legislation or piece of regulation on the gaming industry in any state in the United States that's better than the one we have here in Massachusetts.
Hi there. Father
One
McGowan,
thing's-
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, and please absolutely pick up the conversation where it left off when I'm done. I just wanted to say that if folks wanted to line up to ask questions, you have to ask a question into the microphone. Thank you so much. Just a reminder, a question is something with a question mark at the end. Your voice will go up at the end, and then you'll stop talking, and then these people will talk. Father McGowan, I also have, if people are interested in tweeting their questions, I'm happy to share those with you. Tweet at #FHF, that stands for Fort Hall Forum. Sorry for the interruption. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Just want to point out one thing. We're talking about how Massachusetts, with this question, wouldn't replicate the success of Rhode Island. Well, we certainly do not want to replicate Rhode Island. Rhode Island has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. And if you look at across the country where these casinos have gone up and the economic development that's occurred, you know, there is no real economic development that occurs from casinos. If you go to Atlantic City, a place that I used to go to when I was a child, and it was a lovely place, you know, without casinos. Casinos now, they've actually demolished the entire neighborhoods next to, all the neighborhoods next to the casinos over there because they became so dangerous and so difficult and so economically deprived. So this is not something that's an economic development tool. It's certainly not going to spread beyond the casino, if at all. And it's also something that doesn't lead to economic development. And all you have to do is talk to somebody in Detroit where there are casinos, in Rhode Island where, you know, people are coming into Massachusetts in big numbers because that's where the jobs are. The other thing I want to mention is in Connecticut. Do we really want our government engaged in the kind of economic development of partnering with casinos to bring casinos into a state? I think that's sick. You know, our government should not be engaged in this kind of thing, whether you're from the left or from the right. I mean, this is not a good idea to have government engaged in vices and to promote it. In Oregon, where they had a $20 million deficit last year in their budget, they decided to add another 2,000 slot machines because the state decided, hey, wow, we're having a difficult time. Let's add 2,000 more slot machines. Slot machines are the most predatory form of gambling, and this is the kind of thing that that other states do when they get engaged in the casino industry and get engaged in the casino economies.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Louis Cialoni. I just want to make one comment, if I could, before my question. My first vote that I cast in 1972 was for George McGowan. And when Richard Nixon was waving on that helicopter, we were right then, and a no vote is right now for Massachusetts. What I want to ask is to you, General, if the yes vote prevails this election, there are people working already in Plain Ridge. Those jobs, could you address what would happen to that facility and those jobs if your side prevailed in November?
I mean, first of all, I appreciate the question. And the reality is that, as the Supreme Judicial Court said at the end of June, this industry began its process knowing there was going to be a vote on repeal. That risk was undertaken by the industry. They went ahead and produced, they proceeded. Most of them got to defer. They made sure they deferred their $85 million upfront fee they were supposed to pay. They deferred that so they weren't liable there. But I didn't hear them any time go to the legislature and say, be sure that you protect. We've decided that we're going to keep going, even though it's not been approved, even though it's being subject to ratification, even though the Attorney General was voted down 7-0 for taking a position that lacked common sense in this process. And so therefore the answer is legally, and I've heard this asked before, not just on the question of the jobs, but on the question of actual compensation for businesses that have proceeded, the answer is there is no compensation. That's decided by the Supreme Court because it's up to the legislature. Let me just say this. I have no doubt that after we win, the legislature, in its wisdom, will be called back into play as it has been done on any number of other initiative petitions that have passed. The legislature comes back into session and tries to figure out, now what do we do? And given what I understand to be the political pressure, given that we've already had Charlie Baker and Martha say they will at least reconsider for one casino, which aside from it being, a complete cop-out, frankly, of two people I respect a great deal in that regard, they're just facing reality. This is like tobacco. Even if we win, casinos are coming back. They've been coming back for 20 years. They never stopped. They waited for tough economic times and come back. It's just like tobacco did and continues to do, even though they were defeated. Now, would I say the answer to this is, if the legislature wanted in its wisdom to compensate those industries, if they chose to compensate them, if they chose to protect the jobs, I'm not going to sit here and argue about that. Nobody's going to argue about that. That's a question for the legislature to decide, since they apparently have decided, not to provide it. The industry decided not to ask for protection except on its own fees that it was going to pay. Now, I would like to, one other thing, just to your point.
Didn't they decide to pass a casino law?
I think that the Springfield folks have done, and I think Mr. Mathis has done an excellent job. And focusing on Springfield was very, very smart politically, and I think desperately reflected the desperate economic conditions in Springfield, which is, as I said before, is a sad commentary on us as a state, that we have a major city with great bones, as Jerry Belair says, with great universities, great healthcare system, within 20 miles of Hartford Airport. We should be, the Pioneer Valley, as Frank Callahan attempted to achieve when it should be a showcase for Massachusetts economy. Now, that doesn't, but casinos don't do that. And the second piece about it is that contract that MGM has signed. The one thing I respectfully say is, you read that agreement, it's best efforts. There's no guarantee. There's no legal guarantee. You want me to guarantee jobs that are now were undertaken under risk. There's no guarantee that any promise, this is where I think there's a close question of a violation of Fair and Deceptive Practices Act. There's no guarantee that if they fail to provide these jobs, they can be, Springfield has any remedy, because every provision in the agreement is a best efforts. Of course, reasonable best efforts, but no contract ever signed has actually promised and guaranteed those jobs. I have always thought that that was a flaw, that the industry ought to, as 1994 at Sands in New Bedford, the owner of Sands Casino said, I agree with everything the Attorney General says. We ought to guarantee these. There ought to be a clawback. We promise them, we ought to guarantee them. And if they're not there, the only thing I disagree with is I think we can do that consistent with preserving Springfield and New Bedford as a meaningful city.
If I can, I'd like just to add, and then we need time for you folks as well, and I'll be quick. One of the things that'll happen on November 5th is that 500 construction workers on the Plain Ridge site are going to lose their jobs. I love the discussion about Springfield, and Scott is right. We did it right. We're very proud of it. We think it's an important issue, but we're not the only one. Wynn Resorts is going to spend $30 million cleaning up a chemical site where there is no relief coming up. They're going to spend $1.6 billion on that project. The folks in Plain Ridge have already spent $100 million towards a $200 million project. There are people going to work, and while it'd be important to compensate us, the companies that got invited to this jurisdiction to invest, the question is, what are you going to do for those people? What are you going to do for the 3,000 people that won't get our jobs, the 2,000 people on our site, 4,500 other people that work with Frank? What are you going to do for those people? One other thing I'd say is Bill works for a company called Shama Design and Construction. I'd welcome you all to Google that company when we're done. What you'll see is a list of clients, hospitals, hospitality. There's a tab called gaming. If you click gaming, you will see a number of customers. They talk about our jobs aren't good enough. I guess construction jobs are good enough. His company helped build Foxwoods Casino, helped build Mohegan Sun. They go around the state building these products that they say aren't good enough for Massachusetts. That's a head scratcher. I'd love to hear his explanation for it, but I cannot understand that.
My explanation? First of all, I'm Bill Walczak, spent my life in public health. My tenure at Shawmut ends next Friday, just so you know. Shawmut's a great company, really is. Great company. It's an employee-owned company. It's a union company. It employs union workers. It's doing a lot of work right now, and that's because the economy is really booming in eastern Massachusetts. And my suggestion for it is that we continue to build the economy of Massachusetts and not start building the economy of Las Vegas. Las Vegas is another place that suffered terribly during the recession and continues to suffer. We don't want that economy in Massachusetts. We want the economy that we are building right now with good jobs that pay really good wages, not $23,000 a year, but really good wages. And we want to be able to build construction for new housing that we desperately need. There's plenty of jobs that we can commit to in Massachusetts for construction workers. And I totally believe that we ought to be full employment for construction workers, and we can achieve that without getting low and taking on the casino industry and taking on the economy and the corruption that comes with that industry. In terms of my decision making at Shawmut, I'm the community relations guy for Shawmut Construction. I'm very proud of that company, as I mentioned, and they do a great job. They're building the Ferdinand Building in Dudley Square right now. It won't be a casino. It'll be a place where lots of people come to work in Dudley Square. It's an area that will be revived as a result of that building. It'll be an area that Roxbury can be proud of. And I guarantee you, if we put a casino in there instead of the Ferdinand Building, we'd see devastation in the area around that. But we are smart enough to be able to, and the city was smart enough to be able to use to rehabilitate the Ferdinand Building and build new, so that we could actually put in good jobs and good economic development in there. And I'm not going to say anything bad about Shawmut. It's a great company. It absolutely is a great company. I know they do work for casinos in other states, but I am not representing Shawmut Construction tonight. I am representing Bill Walczak, resident of Dorchester.
I'd like to remind the moderator and the speakers that we want to get to every single question, and it's tiring standing in line. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, I have a comment. I don't have a question because I came with questions, but hearing these two gentlemen, I know where I'm voting no on 3. First of all, the gentleman with the yellow tie, and first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming and giving us a chance. You made a comment that totally just destroyed everything you say. From that point on, you said, I'm against gambling because it's going to take away from the lottery that helps with school and building and jobs and all that. Isn't lottery gambling? And number two, I mean, I'm going to go crazy with it. The gentleman that comes with God, he said the 3 sins, which I assume is gambling and it's alcohol and it's what else? What's the third one, officer?
Tobacco.
Okay. Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine.
Guns.
Jesus turned water into wine because he knew people needed to drink at a party. And I'm going to tell you something. God wants us all to make our own choices. Some people go to gamble for fun. Some people go because they have a problem. But who are you to decide who makes those choices? And as far as work, I'm a parent of 3 children, and I do have a job, thank God. I have no health care. No benefits, no anything, and I do work hard, and I've been promised a job building this 3-year product, 2-3-year project, and it's a great job with health benefits, with the whole package. And let me just say, because I kind of wrote, because they shock me when they speak. He said, that these the entertainment buildings are going to take money from the people. From my experience, it's taxes that takes money from the people. It's high gas prices. It's bottled water that's sold for $2. It's the government that takes money from the people. not these buildings. These buildings are offering 16,000 jobs. I need one of those jobs. And from what you say as far as lottery is cool, but gambling's not, that just shows me the kind of person you are.
Let me, look, I respect very much what you said. I do not want to rebut in any respect. I want to just clarify.
Yeah.
We have a lottery. This is not, for me, a moral issue. I mentioned to you, the reason I mentioned the lottery was because Joe Malone, not me, 3 candidates for treasurer, not me, opposed the expansion of gambling because of the cannibalization of the lottery, which is one of the most successful. We already gamble at $1,000 per capita in Massachusetts, and by the Mass Gaming Commission statistics alone, they expect $345 more to be added. That means that we are now, the other states that are even close are states like Maryland, where they gamble at a level like $328, $450 per capita. The question is, as Bill said, and all we're saying is, where is that money coming from? Is it coming from the people from Macau? Is it coming from Paris? Or is it coming from Massachusetts residents? And maybe we can afford $1,345 per capita for gambling, which is double what any other state expects from it. That's my only point. Your other points are perfectly fair, and people should pay a great deal of attention to them.
No, thank you for answering me. And if I may say one thing, your fight should be with the high cost of life, not with a possibility of people working. If Kanye West wants to fly out here and spend millions, let him. If the person that has an issue gambling, well, that's shame on him. How about the people that don't gamble? How about the parents that raise children and will go there, work, do waitressing, do construction, do hotel jobs? What about the 16,000 people that don't gamble? And I feel sorry for your relative that had a gambling issue, but I have children I have to think of. I can't worry about everybody else's problem.
Okay.
But thank you guys for giving me a chance to speak, and thanks everybody.
Okay.
Father McGowan, thank you. My name's Neil O'Brien. I'm a concerned citizen of Mass. With approximately 200,000 people out of work in the Commonwealth, and through discussion here tonight in Discovery, I come to understand that many of them don't have college degrees, or at least in the 60th percentile. It appears that 10,000 jobs may stimulate the economy in the state. The repeal group, as I've come to understand, has said that these are not the kind of jobs that we want in Massachusetts. So I suppose my question would be not for Mr. Harshbarger or Mr. Walczak, but for Mr. Mathis or Mr. Callahan. Could you kindly elaborate on the type jobs, whether they'd be construction or career jobs, and maybe the job descriptions on what you think the type jobs that the gaming would promote?
Sure. Yeah, I think we'll tag team that between us, because I can speak to the operational jobs and Frank can speak to the construction jobs. Thank you. Thank you for the question. A comment was made about $23,000 being the median gambling job. One of the problems I have with this debate is the people on the repeal side want to talk about Detroit, they want to talk about Atlantic City, but no one wants to talk about Massachusetts or talk about our proposal or the facts. Not one person on this side ever asked to see our job listing and what we plan to pay. I'll tell you what we're going to pay. We're going to pay between $30,000 and $35,000 as a base salary. We have over 300 job classifications. Springfield had a historic moment yesterday. The governor came to town and awarded a Chinese global company a rail car contract on the old Westinghouse site. Amazing opportunity, historic for a town of Springfield coming out of so many years of tough times. Those are going to be high-skilled jobs that are going to be amazing jobs. There's 200 of those. You go to the 7,000 people that are unemployed and ask them how many are going to qualify for those jobs, and you're going to have a lot of people still unemployed. So I'm proud of the jobs we offer, because we offer them at various levels, and we offer entry-level jobs for people that have never had a job and it'll be their first job on the way to a career with MGM Resorts. So thank you for your question, because I think anybody that discounts any job, Bill, if you go to Springfield and offer a $23,000 job, I will fill that room for you. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you. I touched on a little bit about the construction jobs. The construction industry is typically 3 times the average wage rate for people without a college degree. That's because we invest in our workforce. The building trades unions and our contractors invest over $32 million a year.
A minority problem. I mean, out of this entire room of people, say we've got 100 people here, 2 to 4% will have that issue. The rest will be responsible gamers. The Expanded Gaming Act takes that into consideration. They have a research initiative as part of that package that is was funded for $2 million to research gaming and its effects on local economies and families. And that's going great guns right now. It hasn't been an ignored issue. The other thing I wanted to talk about just briefly is crime. Crime in Norwich, Connecticut. Crime has not gone up the way it was foretold that it would. It hasn't happened. Crime already exists in this state. What's happened to our last 3 Speakers of the House? There's crime in Massachusetts. There will continue to be crime in Massachusetts. There's criminal landlords all over the place. I mean, it happens, it's there, we'll deal with it. It does not reflect upon the purchaser of that property. The commission has already said that. They've said it multiple times. And, I mean, we're looking forward to having the casino in Everett. It will be a life changer for us.
Just want to point out one thing. There's a reason why they call it mitigation. The casino industry, gambling people recognize that there's going to be problems. They recognize there's going to be crime. They recognize there's going to be vice. They recognize there's going to be additional addiction to gambling, and that's why they call it mitigation. And so don't expect things to just be hunky-dory and, whatever, not to increase in problems.
I checked my rose-colored glasses at the door.
I'd just like to remind the speakers, the moderator, and the audience, we won't get out of here any later than 8:05 because we run a tight ship here. So we've got 6 questions in 10 minutes. Let's see if we can keep both the questions and the answers as pithy as possible.
My name is Roger Thistle. I'm from Everett, Massachusetts. I have just one clarification from Mr. Harshbarger. The foreclosure rate, I'm in the real estate industry, and the foreclosure rate in Las Vegas had nothing to do with the casinos. It had a national recession that went on, and that was due to the banking industry. It had nothing to do with the
Yes, but the
casino.
point was, just that the clarification was, the
That's it.
casinos, no, the casinos
my
were
statement.
spent,
I have a
are
question.
spent as economic development. They were supposed to, it was the one industry was not supposed to be affected that way. The only point that I made is, this is the most successful destination resort city in the country. They only break even, and they make all their money in Macau. We all know that. And the second part is that they had the highest foreclosure. In other words, the economic benefits of Las Vegas my only point was, did not spread to any of the surrounding community or businesses. Your point, otherwise, that's the only point I want to make.
Massachusetts was number 5 in the nation in foreclosures at that time. So it had nothing to do with casinos. But anyways, my question is, and the gentleman from Springfield already touched on it, but I want to ask the yes people. It's reported that Massachusetts residents spend $1.6 billion in New England on casinos. If the residents of Massachusetts are doing this regardless, why in the world do we let the jobs and the $1.6 billion just flow out of the state?
Go ahead.
I'm not going to. I think it's you.
No, there's that's simply a mythical figure. First of all, nobody's ever proved that amount, and we agree there's a recapture.
$1.6 billion.
No, look at the mass. Look, you've all praised the Mass Gaming Commission. I happen to respect greatly 2 people I know very, very well to serve on that. I believe they've exercised adult supervision, and I credit them. My critique was simply that I do believe that a system like this tends to affect the judgment sometimes from time to time of people in it. In this situation, the commission never has come up with that number. The most I've ever heard is $900 million, perhaps because Clyde Barrow, who's already paid for by the casino industry, and every study he's done, anticipates that. Steve Grossman went and checked license plates. I mean, there's never been a study that we know of. And the second part is, even we capture a certain amount of it, the point is they estimate that the Massachusetts casino people have told the commission has estimated that they will take $345 per capita is anticipated from Massachusetts residents. So that at least that offsets whatever amounts being recaptured, because that's counted already baked into the figure when they talk about it. So I don't disagree that there's money being spent in other states. I would just mention to people that a book that's just been written by Bob Steele, a former congressman in Connecticut, points out that that the 2 casinos in Connecticut have destroyed, essentially, the rural region around it. That doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means that's a fact, that it actually impacted economically every small business in that community, whatever that, maybe they weren't exercising what Michael and others purport to be exercising in Springfield. That book demonstrates the impact of what were known as the most successful casinos in the world, and at least one of which is probably close to bankruptcy right now.
We need to take the next
As I
question,
understand
please. And questions only, no comments. Step right up.
Good evening, gentlemen. My question is for the side of the people. My name is Richard Olicio, and I'm a resident of the city of Everett. I have one question to the gentleman. When the state lottery was brought into the state of Massachusetts, what was your position on it, Mr. Harshbarger? That's number one. Number two.
I'm sorry, we don't have time for several questions.
Okay, well, it's the same relation. Okay.
Please.
All right, 1 second.
Folks
Just
are
1
trying to
second.
ask their questions. Just ask one question of the panel.
Okay. The State Lottery Commission, the monies that are brought into the state, that is gaming. That is gambling. You have old ladies with crutches going into a store and gambling. When the commission was first formed, what type of construction jobs were brought into the state to build that building in Braintree? What type of jobs for servicing were brought into the state for people that need jobs today in our state of Massachusetts? What type of jobs are there? I don't know. I can't remember. All that money that's brought back to the state of Massachusetts, you say given to the cities and towns. When I first started in the city of Everett, my tax rate was $1,200 a year. My tax rate is $4,400. Where's all this money that all these cities and towns are getting? And I don't believe, and I don't want to hear that it's going, oh, well, this person's misusing it, that person's misusing it. Okay? And you want to talk about a token
Hang
that's
on, let them answer the question.
Put in a slot machine, okay? Token put in a slot machine. The lottery is run by computer also. When it generates the lottery number, it's a computer.
Do we have an answer from the speakers?
The answer on the lottery is that it is the most successful lottery in the world. And it is admitted, it is a model for others. And part of the reason it's a model is because it produces, I believe it's some 50 to 55% is guaranteed that goes into local aid to cities and towns. And our only point in that was people ought to recognize that if this takes a hit, the hit is to local aid. The hit is also to lottery agents who concede that the people spend 3 times what they buy in lottery tickets at these stores. So there's that impact as well. It's not a zero risk game. All this is a risk. All we're saying is, why go to the next level? We already gamble at a higher rate than any other state in the country. Why are we asking to bring even more of the potential problems in return for what one could argue is marginal revenue, and that probably, in my view, ought to be being addressed in some other way that produces real jobs, good jobs in every part that you've all talked about. I agree with completely. I just happen to think it's a commentary on our political leadership, not a commentary only on the casino industry.
Okay, thank you.
Please.
My name's Frank Parker. I live in Everett. Regarding the state lottery, it's very successful in my town. In Everett, we spend $8 million a year on lottery sales. We get back $5.5 million. Great, huh?
Well, what are your reps doing about
Okay.
that? What,
in the meantime, your friend Joe Curatone, they spend $10 million a year, and Joe, who's opposed to the expanded gaming, cashes the check for $21 million. Okay? So let me get to my point. So my name's Frank Parker. Yeah, real successful. Cambridge spends 8 and gets back 18. Real fair to people like Medford, Chelsea, Malden. Okay? My name's Frank Parker. Like I said, I'm also the vice chairman of the school committee. We have 7,200 kids in our Everett Public Schools. As defined by reduced or free lunch, 80% of them live in poverty. So my question is regarding poverty and jobs. So per the well-being of Everett by the Cambridge Health Alliance, the percentage of families in poverty in Everett is 9.5%. State average is 7.6%. Percentage female-headed families in poverty is 5.4%. 4%, state average is 4.7%. So I keep on hearing, these aren't good jobs, we can do better. To these people in poverty, if the yes vote prevails on November 5th, what are you going to tell them on November 6th that they can do better?
I'll tell you one thing that you should be doing with your legislators is demanding a real economic policy rather than producing jobs that are below the poverty line. So, you know, the poverty line is pretty low, and these are wages that are actually below that, the national numbers. I'm not sure what Wynn is offering, and certainly it's whatever it is a best case opportunity or whatever. But I do think that that we ought to be demanding of our elected officials that we have real economic policies that result in real economic growth and not these kinds of things that take money away from poor people. I can tell you that when you walk around in poor neighborhoods, one of the things that's really obvious is all the scratch tickets that are on the ground everywhere in a community, right? So, you know, in Dorchester or whatever, you know, and so I'm, you know, personally, I'm a public health person, as I explained before. I don't support the lottery. I think it's a bad idea. It's bad economic development in itself, although it can say that, you know, that at least the profits are going to wind up in the state rather than out of the state, like with the casino industry.
Thank you for your question.
Next question, please.
Hi, my name is Carol Malin. I live just outside of Detroit, Michigan, and I was a day one dealer from MGM Grand Detroit. So part of the question goes to the gentleman at this end, and then the other gentleman who's the building trades, I think he answered it. But so the casino opened in 1999, and I'm a dealer. I was a dealer, and we make 50 grand a year. So I believe we make those wages because I was very proud to work at MGM and proud of their management, but also because we had great union contracts that this gentleman from the building trades had mentioned. So if we can lock that in, I believe 14 years later, we still have beautiful jobs. So when the gentleman said that they only make 20 grand a year, where does that information really come from?
I'll explain to you. It's the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, which you can go online.
Like not
and actually, they have Detroit, Livonia, Dearborn, Michigan Metropolitan Division, 1,900 people employed by the casino industry, and the annual mean wage, $23,290. That's the U.S. government speaking.
Right, but I could show you pay tips that show that MGM Grand in Detroit make 50 grand a year.
If I could chime.
And we were proud that they were help us, but we're also very proud that they're union jobs to lock it in for all these years. So,
Would you be willing to move to Massachusetts, ma'am? Because I could use you in Springfield.
Folks, we have to, our speakers do have to go. Next question.
If I could add to that just quickly.
Right.
Those are national statistics. But it's been said by both sides, this is Massachusetts. We're not Biloxi, we're not Indiana, we're not New Mexico, we're not a lot of those other venues. We're a higher wage state. So a national average does not reflect Massachusetts. We're a high wage, high cost state. And as you pointed out, these are going to be union jobs. Not all those jobs in that national average.
That's right.
Are union jobs. And that's where the differences in pay.
Good evening. My name is Karen Carroll. This question is for the yes gentleman. Over the past few weeks,
In Massachusetts on training for apprentices, for journeyman upgrade training and safety training to produce the most highly skilled, best trained, experienced workforce in the world. And I say that with some pride, as you can probably tell. Nationally, we spend over $1 billion a year with our contractor partners. And that's so we can produce, we earn our pay every day in the rain and the heat and the wind in the winter, and do those jobs. Those are the types of jobs that would be created here. People with good union wages. All those, by the way, will be built under project labor agreements, which was a component that I worked on in this legislation for the construction end. And there were commitments in there, not just on what types of jobs that was just mentioned that would exist in the facilities that had to be laid out by all the applicants for a license, but there were commitments in there that they had to have the support of organized labor. I see some of my counterparts from other unions in the room. Those negotiations have been going on for a long time, and some of them are ongoing. but those are going to be good union jobs. Those workers will have a voice on the job. They'll have a collective bargaining agreement. I mentioned earlier the training programs that MGM has with the hotel and restaurant employees, second to none. So those people aren't just in a specific job, you have room for advancement. I don't want to go on too long because I do want to have other people have answers, but I hope I gave you a flavor of what those types of jobs are. At the end, I'll just sum up. They're family-sustaining wages with good benefits.
Much appreciated. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
My name is Thalia. I'm news editor of the Suffolk Journal, a Suffolk student, and I actually answer helpline calls at the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling. So I actually generally deal with addicts, alcoholics, gambling addicts all day, every day. I'm the one answering the calls in both English and Spanish. So my question is for Frank and Michael. I want to know if you guys, if people do, or if the majority of people do vote no on question 3, if you guys will be or are currently working with private practitioners, the Massachusetts Council on Compulsive Gambling, or even taking any trainings, because the reality of it is that some of the people that you are representing, not a large portion, not even a majority, but a small portion will become addicted to gambling, especially those that already have disorders, or addiction, sorry. So I just want to know if you are working with certain groups or becoming more, I guess, educated on addiction and how to deal with addicts.
Great question.
Thank you.
You know, our product's like any other product. It can be abused. And you're talking to some of the folks that do abuse it. We think it's 1% to 2% of the population, but there's differing percentages on that. I think you'll agree it's not the 40 or 20 or 40% that you heard earlier today. But we have a number of strategies around that. One of the things that is going on right now is that Massachusetts customers are now going to neighboring casinos, and they're leaving those dollars there, and they're bringing that addiction back to Massachusetts. But the difference is there's no funding for organizations like the Compulsive Gaming Council. What the beauty of the statute, and it's a really progressive statute, 100 pages. One of the things it talks about is where do the tax dollars go to make sure that you don't make the mistake that some of the other jurisdictions have made, where you get all the tax revenue, but it doesn't go to handle some of the adverse impacts. And with any development project, there are adverse impacts, and we recognize that. What the gaming statute does in Massachusetts is it provides 5% of the tax revenues are going to go towards resources like that. So there's going to be money. There's going to be, for the first time in Massachusetts, tens of millions of dollars annually to help people like that, whether they're going to our casinos or whether they're going to neighboring casinos. The other thing that a company like ours does, MGM Resorts, and we're on the leading edge of this, is we provide training and we provide programs within our resort. We have a program called self-exclusion, for example, where you or a family member can identify yourself as a problem gamer, and then we will trespass you, exclude you from the property. Again, I don't know that those protections are happening outside of the state, and I think one of the tragedies is that you're going to have a gaming addiction that comes back to Massachusetts without any resources. So we believe it's really important. We can always improve in that area, and we continue to do so. And again, thank you for the work you're doing. It's really important.
Can I just say one thing? I think it's very important that the problem gambling issue has been addressed, and the Council on Compulsive Gambling does an excellent job. Has been funded over the years, but I think this is no question that will be an advantage, because it assumes there will be a dramatic increase in addiction and problem gamblers. But I do want to say that with people talking about the jobs, I just want to note that Senator Elizabeth Warren is voting for repeal. Congressman Stephen Lynch has said he is voting for repeal. Nikki Tsongas is voting for repeal. This is not just all wild-eyed radicals out here that have somehow an anti-job position. These are people who you have supported consistently. And you're entitled to disagree. That I agree with completely, just as, you know, as I said, I value greatly the support I've had from you, and we disagree on this. But the fact that's one. The second thing is, Michael, I would, with all due respect, I'm not sure that that's exactly the numbers that were put before the Mass Gaming Commission. But let me just say, are you promising the people of Springfield those salaries you just said? Are you going to promise them that that's $30,000 to $35,000 is the base? Is that your promise that you will guarantee the people of Springfield? Because I hope you do, and I hope it's right, but I would like you to guarantee it so that if it doesn't happen, which tends to happen in other places, maybe not us, then we would have a remedy for coming back and dealing with that.
So I don't know any business that guarantees anything like that. And I'm not going to overpromise and deliver. There's a woman in the back, Nancy, who works for the Gaming Commission. Sorry, Nancy, to call you out. We've submitted thousands of pages of what our business plan is. We've done it in a number of jurisdictions, and we believe that we will be able to deliver median salaries between $30,000 and $35,000. Is it a guarantee? No, because we don't know what this market is going to do. We have a high probability of what it's going to do because we're the number one operator in any market. But I think it's unfair, and I wouldn't tell any business that they should be guaranteeing any results.
Wait, people that get tax-exempt bonds have to do guarantees of the job. There are many situations where the project labor agreement is a guarantee. The collective bargaining is a guarantee. There are many things that are guaranteed. It's just not true that you're not required in any market to guarantee jobs in order to get the benefit of the state subsidy that goes with it. So I think, I'm not criticizing you at all. I think you have done, as I said, an excellent job. I just think my only point was that this has been, the history of this industry is that the promises that are given to get in have rarely, if ever, been fully fulfilled. And people are promised these jobs. They are promised the wages. And they vote for you because of that. And once you're here, once they're here, that we would be the first state, I'm not saying we're right or wrong to do it. No state in this country, even though they've gone downhill, and most of those states have far worse economic problems with much higher casino rates than we do, all those states suffered. It was not a check against it was not a check against recession. It was not a check against the financial crisis. They went down the tubes. The highest foreclosure rate was Las Vegas, for crying out loud. I mean, the fact of the matter is that's all I'm saying is tell the truth. That you're not promising that. You're going to try your best efforts to do that. You're going to hope that you can achieve these goals, that you will be successful, whereas most states around us are concerned about oversaturation right now. That's all. And that's the only comment. My apologies for the comment.
No, I don't apologize. We will try our best.
Okay.
All right. My name is William Torres. I'm with the local union 313. My question to the folks know. How can I get training for a resort casino job?
Great question. I was at a showcase last week. 600 people from Springfield showed up asking that very question. We're going to have 1,000 jobs for Springfield residents. Where are you a resident of, sir? Worcester. We've done showcases up in Worcester as well. So when we leave this conference, I'll give you my business card. We're going to be posting positions. We're already doing it right now. We've got a portal that'll allow you to put your skills, put your background in, and then we'll match those up with different positions. We've got engineers, database analysts, graphic artists, all of which pay more than $23,000 a year, by the way. Would love to see what the match is. There are jobs that you don't even know exist in our business that could be a match for you, and we will, through our system, match you up with those. And if there's a gap, we'd love for you to spend the next year, 18 months, hopefully you're employed now, working on those skill sets so that when we start posting jobs, you're ready to go. So I'd love to talk to you afterwards and see if there's a fit there. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ron Newman. I live in Somerville, which is a city that is 1,000 feet from one of the proposed casino sites. I would like the people on the pro-casino side of the table to answer one of the allegations made by the other side, which is that building these casinos and operating them is going to vacuum up money that is now spent by local residents in local businesses and therefore is going to damage the existing economies of Somerville, Cambridge, all the other cities that are bordering Everett, and similarly in other parts of the state.
Yeah, great question, and you've heard a lot about that. One of the things I'd suggest you do is if you go to the Protect Mass Jobs website, which is the No for Three, almost confused the group again, is the No for Three question. You'll see a list of endorsements, different groups that we've reached out to. Every chamber, every major chamber, Paul Guzzi at the Boston Chamber has endorsed this question. The Worcester Chamber has endorsed this question. The Springfield Chamber has endorsed this question.
You mean has endorsed voting no?
has endorsed our position.
Okay.
The no for 3 position. And it's because we've reached out to them and explained to them. For example, our project, and this is similar to Wynn Resorts and in Plainville as well, we're going to spend $50 million annually within the region buying goods and services, buying dry cleaning services, buying floral services. We're going to be a boost to the economy. One of the other things that we do as a business is we make sure that we spin off customers into the surrounding area. So what we've done is we have a concierge service, for example. When you're tired of having a Wolfgang Puck meal, we will suggest that you go down the street and have a Thai meal or an Indian restaurant meal or Mexican, things that we don't offer within the project. And there's documented evidence of that. One of our fellow operators, Penn National Gaming, opened up Hollywood Casino in Bangor, Maine. And they're getting rave reviews for what they've done. One of the things that they've done that we hope to do in Springfield is their development, their casino development led to the opening of a convention center in Bangor, Maine. As you may know, some of you may know, in Springfield, we have the old Civic Center, now the Mass Mutual Center, right across the street from our site. That facility loses $5 million a year to the state because it doesn't provide good convention opportunities. It doesn't have enough quality hotel and restaurants, which are what convention planners need. So we've been talking to them about turning that facility on, and when that facility gets turned on, it will send people up and down Main Street. So there's a strong history of having a catalytic impact on neighboring businesses.
Thank you.
I mean, aside from the fact, that may be, I hope for prayer again, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but let me just say, the history around the country is that these casinos have acted, as Ross Perot used to say, suck those jobs right out of the area over time. There may be short-term benefits, but what are you going to do 5 years from now, 7 years from now, when they operate, when in fact, maybe Springfield will be the exception. My only point is that maybe we can look at that separately from the question of opening up the entire field to everyone. For example, even the Everett site, by the way, if that gets permitted within the next 3 or 4 years, it will be the fastest permitting of a Superfund site in the history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And that will simply put my point that the regulators have caved in on that one because most industries cannot get permitting that fast to take care of that kind of a thing. It's not Wynn that's going to clean up that mess. That's a mess, and it's a major problem right now that I hope the state regulators will exercise the discretion and power they have to make sure that they hold them to the same standards that they hold any other industry to in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Terry Baldwin Williams. I'm from Everett, and I'd like to first offer my sympathies to Mr. Walczak and his family for the problems they've had with problem gaming over the years. That's already been said that is...
Seems to be a theme here.
Over the past few weeks, over 2,500 people have applied for 500 positions in Plainville. Please tell us why these people should not have a job at a casino and why whoever would get these jobs would be better off staying unemployed should your ballot pass.
I'm beginning to think it's sort of like, when are you going to stop beating your wife here? I mean, it's like what there's nothing, I'm not trying, look, none of us, I'm certainly not, as somebody who believes in the yes, but what we tried to say is that I guess I've looked at this as a state that I've been proud to be in. I've been proud to be supported by a union and workers all in my career. I believe that by and large, I've tried to keep the faith in terms of the quality of life of people in Massachusetts. So that I'm not coming here to say I think it's all terrible. I'm just saying, why are we succumbing to this very easy, almost quick fix solution in a state that probably ought to be raising revenues other ways, but politically people object to that, so that we come in this way, and what you're simply saying, I can only say this, I do believe in democracy. I believe in the legislature taking responsibility for what it does. And what I'm hearing from many of you is that the legislature, the leaders of this state, have not delivered fair and equal justice and protection around this Commonwealth. And in one of the most affluent states in the country, we have allowed major pockets of poverty and unemployment to exist. That is not right. That is not fair. I remember this is a group that stood for Jobs for Justice, and I just happen to believe all we're trying to say is we believe the long-term risks here and dangers outweigh the short-term benefits, and there are other ways to do this. And secondly, I can't say back to the future. I'm simply saying this. Look around the country, and the fact is that this industry, like many industries, has not managed to keep pace in this, and promises have not been kept. But look, people are entitled to make their own view. That's what this is all about.
Exactly, sir, but not to interrupt, why not give the Commonwealth a chance to have this opportunity?
It's gonna happen.
I have a son who is an electrician. I am a union food service worker. My husband is in a union. My father was in the electricians union for 55 years. My mother was an avid gambler. God rest her soul. She passed away 5 years ago. She wasn't addicted. She enjoyed it. Let some money come to Massachusetts. Give people in Springfield an opportunity to have a job and build the city. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
And this patient gentleman has our last question for the evening.
Yes, hello. My name is Jim Council. I'm a security officer at Resort World in New York. So I have that experience with dealing with the casino industry. And I'll say this. My first question is this. Have any of you ever or done a survey where you've asked the people who are going to out of state to gamble, would they invest in their state if they had a casino in it? And the next thing is, I get to speak with individuals. We have a casino in New York. It's now 3 years old. And the people who stay and gamble in New York City, they were the ones who were going out and spending their revenue in Atlantic City. Right now, we're doing exceptional. The people are happy they don't have to travel 3 hours to have fun in another state. We're prospering through the revenue. And from what I understand, the infrastructure of Boston is lacking, and it needs revenue. So why would you send or want to advocate, lack of jobs and no revenue to come in to fix your infrastructure? You have casinos willing to open up the coffers, correct mistakes that has been overlooked, and it's going to improve your city and your counties.
I'm going to ask the speakers to, if we can, go down the line here, starting with Mr. Harshbarger and ending with Mr. Mathis. Speak to what this gentleman has asked, and just sort of sum up what you have. Now, don't leave yet. I know all you're putting your jackets on. We're gonna hear what the speakers have to say just to wrap up.
No, I'm not going to, believe it or not, I'm not going to take any more time. I've had an opportunity to express my views. I respect greatly the views that people have given here. I do believe it is in the best interest of this Commonwealth to vote yes on question 3. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you, and I have certainly had a fair opportunity to present the positions that I hold, and all I can say is, that's democracy. I hope we win.
Thank you all for being here tonight. I am a person that has spent a lot of time in my community of Dorchester and looking at the issues that face people. I've come to the conclusion, I came to the conclusion in 2007 when Deval Patrick first pushed the idea of gambling casinos as a solution to the problem of revenue in Massachusetts, that this was a bad idea for the public's health. So I took a stand against it in 2007. I took a stand against it last year when I ran for mayor, and I'm taking a stand against it now. I think you've heard the reasons for, there's a belief on one side that, we're going to provide jobs and we're going to provide revenue for the state of Massachusetts. There's a belief on the other side that that we can do better than this, and that we shouldn't be getting in bed with casinos in order to be able to produce revenue or jobs. That there should be alternatives. You've heard it from it. I hope you'll be considerate of it, and not think that somehow we're all enemies or something like that. I'm a huge supporter of union jobs and union wages. I think it's really important that we have unionization, and that we need to continue to grow our unions, especially in low-wage jobs, so that we can get better benefits and better jobs for people. But I don't think casinos is the way to do it, and hopefully that you respect that opinion. Thank you.
Well, I'll start and I'll finish the same way. I hope when you go to the polls on November 4th that you vote no on question 3. The legislature has put together the Massachusetts model. It is a model. We are different. We are Massachusetts. We're proud of that, arrogantly proud sometimes, but I think we have something to back it up. We learned from the mistakes from other venues and other jurisdictions. We learned from the best practices from those other jurisdictions. It was a long, tedious, and believe me, I wish it was faster, but it was a long, tedious process, and I think we have come out with a good product at the end. I think it was Winston Churchill says, Americans will always do the right thing at the end after trying everything else. I think we've tried, I think other places have tried everything else, and we've learned, and we're doing the right thing here. Let's put people to work. When you fill in that oval on November 4th, fill in and vote no, and I'm going to look at it when I put that in as a period on this 16-year journey. I got 20 years in on this. 16-year journey towards bringing an industry to Massachusetts that's going to create good family-sustaining jobs and provide revenues that are leaving the state of Massachusetts currently at 65 miles an hour every day of the week. I urge you to vote no, and I look forward to working with Mike at Springfield, with the folks in Wynn and Everett. We're already working with 500 of our members working in Plainville, and we're hoping there will be a venue in southeastern Mass shortly after that. Thank you for your time and your attention tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you.
First, I want to thank Jen for losing complete control of this forum hall, despite her best efforts. I'd say that the Massachusetts Gaming Act has worked, and this is the reason why. 11 communities have voted on whether to have a gaming facility in their backyard. And it's not right for every community. You don't need to make the trade-offs with traffic and unemployment. 6 of those have passed it, 5 have not. That's evidence that the process is working. I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit, but I'm also going to toot the horn of the fellow operators that you have before you when you vote on November 4th, and we hope you vote no on question 3. MGM Resorts is the leading entertainment company, not only in the gaming industry, but the entire world. And we look forward to bringing great acts to Springfield, the old Civic Center, where Elvis played back in the 70s, and where no talent comes anymore because they've been pulled away to the Connecticut tribes. We're looking forward to that. You've got Wynn Resorts, which is the leading luxury company in our industry. Choosing Everett, a brownfield site where they're going to invest $30 million to clean up the Mystic River. That's an amazing accomplishment. That's an amazing proposal. And you got Plainville, which incredibly and courageously is building, spending $100 million on a project with this issue out there. But I guarantee you there's 500 construction workers that are really happy that they made that decision. You should be really proud of where you're at with these 3 proposals and what the Gaming Act has delivered. And I hope you agree with us come November 4th. Thank you.